Hi everyone, how is everyone doing? Let's get started. Feel free to start asking questions. But yeah, I'm just going to start off with covering a common question that I get. And I get this question pretty much on all of my profile building calls, and it is, which criteria should I target as an industry professional? And for most of you, the criteria to target are going to be outside of leading a critical role and high salary and possibly original contributions is judging and authorship and potentially membership. Everything else outside of that, like media coverage and awards, they're not going to be the kinds of criteria that you want to target right off the bat. And the reason for why media coverage is not, or awards, those kinds of criteria are not criteria you want to target, is because they're just difficult to meet. They're difficult to meet because they're not really interpreted on a plain language level. And what that means is, say with judging tends to be interpreted on plain language level, which means that if you've done any form of judging, you could potentially get the criterion, or there's a high likelihood you could get granted the criterion, assuming that the judging that you've done is legitimate and not low quality. That doesn't really apply to awards and media coverage, in that you could have some awards, you could have received some awards, you could have received media coverage, and still not be able to claim the criterion because an officer introduced a higher standard, one based on their subjective understanding of the criterion instead of on what is actually written in the policy manual. So unlike judging, for example, if you've done a bit of judging and it falls under the pretty much like the layperson's understanding of the policy manual, then it counts towards judging. Whereas with awards, that is not something that usually happens, or with media coverage, it's not something that usually happens. Also, it's quite unlikely for industry professionals to get media coverage and awards. So those are two criteria that you don't really want to target unless you really have to. But for some reason, they still come up all the time. Like, people love to talk about awards, people love to talk about media. That's just something to keep in mind. Outside of that, yeah, the other common question I get is how to start off with finding judge role opportunities. So I answered this question today with a profile building call. There are quite a few ways to find judge role opportunities, and it usually comes down to a mixture of applying for these opportunities as they come up, as you see them, and reaching out to people who are already involved in the judging activities that you want to participate in. So applying is pretty obvious. Just go find some calls for reviewers. Sometimes conferences will have that, although not very common. I haven't seen too many of them have that. Or just apply for a hackathon that has a judge form. That is a form that you can fill out to get a judging opportunity. But yeah, that's one side of getting these opportunities. There's also outreach. Outreach is probably the more effective way to land judging opportunities. And it's also the way you want to land judging opportunities that are not visible, that don't have open calls, but could still involve you. So for example, a lot of upcoming conferences have conference committees. While they are usually not advertising some sort of open application for conference committee positions, based on some of the people I've spoken to, they have been able to land conference committee positions just by reaching out and showing how their expertise is relevant to the conference, particularly the industry track. So that is something else you can do to land judging opportunities, because on the conference committee, you could potentially get access to peer review opportunities by helping review submissions for the conference. You can also reach out to VCs, to people who are organizing hackathons, to incubators. A lot of them will have access to the kinds of judging that you want to be doing, like judging startup pitch competitions, judging hackathons. Those are just the kinds of opportunities that you can just get by reaching out to the right people. So that's just a bit about targeting criteria and also judge role opportunities. Hi, Henry. Greetings. And yeah, feel free to start asking questions. In the meantime, I can share some of the resources that I've put together as part of my paid newsletter. So as part of my newsletter, which is $12 per month, you will get access to some of my newsletter resources, which includes a profile building opportunities database. So this database currently contains hundreds of profile building opportunities broken down by field, categorized by criteria. And these are just to give you a sense of how to start with profile building, the kinds of opportunities you want to get involved with as a way to start meeting top professionals in your field and to start landing judge role opportunities, judging opportunities, membership opportunities, authorship opportunities. So if you look down here, there are quite a few fields that I've covered. I think the most opportunities I have so far are for software engineers, for people in AI. So this is just to give you a sense of how you can get started with profile building and the kinds of opportunities you can actually go for. I also review AO decisions from time to time. These go into USCIS's reasoning behind and initially denying an EB-1A or NIW or O1. And from these decisions, I draw out profile building insights, which give you an understanding of how USCIS thinks about EB-1A, about EB2 NIW, and about O1. I also have some video resources as part of my newsletter resources, and these are just recorded conversations with EB-1A recipients where I ask questions that a lot of you ask me all the time, like how to claim leading or critical role, how to claim original contributions, how to put together strong reference letters. So I asked some of these in my video resources. And something I also run as part of my newsletter is a private group and a group chat where a lot of people have been sharing collaboration requests. I've heard many times now of people finding opportunities just from other people within the group chat because there are a lot of these industry leaders as well as leaders of professional organizations in the group chat, and they're always sharing opportunities that are particular to their organization. I've heard people get published in IEEE conferences by working with people who are in the group chat. And there are all kinds of opportunities being shared and all kinds of, I think like recently I saw a call for book chapter contributions for a notable publisher. These are just the kinds of opportunities that are being shared in the private group right now and the group chat. So that's something else that you will get access to as part of my newsletter. And something else I'm looking to host more of are insight sessions. There'll be one this Wednesday with an EB-1A and O1 recipient within the group. So she was able to get EB-1A and O1, and she was a part of the private group. So she'll be sharing insights. I will also be organizing another insight session with a product manager who has been able to build quite a strong EB-1A profile. And I will also be organizing an insight session with an IET fellow and fellowship advisor who is also currently a part of the private group. So that's just to give you a sense of some of the insight sessions that are coming up. And you can get access to these resources as part of my paid newsletter, which is $12 per month. Would love to know about memberships. So membership is a difficult criterion to target, but it can be a criterion you can go for, especially if you think that you have the possibility of joining some of these member organizations. It's not really about joining general member organizations and becoming a general member. It's more about joining memberships and showing that a requirement of membership is outstanding achievements in your field. So you need to go higher than just general member. So that could be joining a committee of a conference, of a top conference in your field, and showing that you had to go through a rigorous selection process in order to get into that conference committee. It could be joining an editorial board of a top publication in your field and showing that this required some sort of rigorous evaluation process and that other members of the editorial board have outstanding achievements. You will have to argue the definition of outstanding achievements. You will have to show the context for an officer to accept your claim that you were able to show outstanding achievements as a member, and that other members who hold this tier of membership have outstanding achievements. So that's just a bit about the membership criterion, and it is difficult to meet, but you can still try to meet it with memberships that require its members to have outstanding achievements. And again, you have to define what that means for the officer. So that's just a bit about memberships. Anyone else have questions? Feel free to start asking questions in the chat. But yeah, since there are no other questions, I can't stress this enough. A lot of profile building is just about outreach. It's about reaching the right people who have access to the opportunities that you want to get access to. And that may sometimes require that you join a member organization that requires like some sort of membership fee. That may require you to go to local chapter events, to talk to people. Vanya asks, can reviewing open source pull requests come under judging if you're a maintainer or approver? It would have to be for open source contributions outside of your company, possibly to a well-known open source project. This is more of the unconventional kind of judging that you might want. It's more unconventional in that it could work. It just has to be for an open source project outside of your company. And you have to explain how doing this is an example of judging the work of others. You're going to have to explain that. And whether USCIS buys that argument or not is going to come down to how well you explain it. And can maintainer qualify as a membership? Depends. If you are the leader of an open source project that is being used by thousands of US companies, then perhaps that could count towards the membership criterion, but again, you have to show outstanding achievements. Can the subscription be on a month by month basis? Is there any commitment? No, there's no commitment. There are two ways you can become a member of my paid newsletter. You can either join on a monthly basis or you can join on an annual basis. So there are two options, and you can cancel anytime. Any other questions? But yeah, going back to what I was saying, a lot of EB-1A profile building is just outreach. So if you want authorship opportunities, reach out to a lot of people who are working on papers and publications and book chapters in your field. Try to target 20 to 30 of these people every single day, if possible. Get to a point where you're reaching out to hundreds of people every month, and you will start to encounter people who are doing the kinds of activities that you want to be doing. And the reason why I say this is because I am also doing this exact same thing, except I'm doing it for my newsletter. I am contacting people who have access to these kinds of opportunities and then redirecting these people to the newsletter group. And in the course of maintaining this group, I've been coming across all kinds of people who have been working on papers, who have been contributing to books, who have been working on technical publications. So I see these people all the time, and they're exactly the kinds of people you want to be talking to. So I see these people all the time. I talk to at least 2 of them a day. So because of that, that is my understanding of profile building. There are all these people out there doing the kinds of activities that you want to be doing as a profile builder. And all it takes is for you to reach out to them and start a conversation. Do that hundreds of times, and you will probably end up with 2 to 3 profile building opportunities in a span of 6 months. And that's like judging opportunities, that's authorship opportunities. It's just going to come down to a lot of outreach, a lot of messages, a lot of presenting your expertise and showing that it is relevant to the person you're reaching out to. You can't just reach out and say, hey, I saw that you're working on a paper, let me be a co-author. You can't just do that. It's more about showing that First, you have to ask if they need a co-author. You have to understand their needs as well. Maybe they're not in need of a co-author, in which case, perhaps there are other ways you can still help. And then maybe months down the line, they will start to think about you because you helped them once, and then they may have come across someone who is in need of a co-author. And then that's how you could get a co-author opportunity. And that could lead to some sort of IEEE paper. That could lead to some sort of book with O'Reilly or Taylor and Francis. Those are the really common publishers that I've been coming across with a lot of these profile building, a lot of profile builders who are contributing book chapters. But that's just to give you an example of how important outreach actually is. It's what's going to determine a lot of what's going to happen with your profile building in the next 6 months to a year. How much outreach you do. And I say this because I've also seen several examples, more than several examples, of profile builders who have been able to build extremely strong profiles just through outreach alone. All they did was they just went to every single local chapter event for all the organizations they were able to join. ACM, IEEE, they went to all the meetups, they went to all the local chapter events, and they simply just went to talk to people. And from those conversations, they were able to start landing opportunities that then got them speaking opportunities, that then got them authorship opportunities, that then got them judging opportunities. It's just about starting as many conversations as possible with people who can use your expertise to help with what they need help with so that they can then involve you in the opportunities that they are involved with. How many judging opportunities are good to have? I would say 2 to 3 are good. Anything above 10 is probably too much. 2 to 3 is good, I would say. And 2 to 3 high quality judging opportunities. Not just like low quality opportunities that, and this is something I was going to talk about as well. It's that when judging the quality of an opportunity, you want to think about how it can advance your argument that you're risen to the top of your field. That's the argument you're trying to advance with EB-1A. With anything you present, it's about showing how you've risen to the top of your field. If you want to show a compelling argument for how you've risen to the top of your field, make sure the evidence you present makes sense for that argument. Because the last thing you would want is to have everything look really strong and then include some sort of shady or sketchy opportunity that doesn't really show that you're risen to the top of your field. It might even suggest that you just kind of got the opportunity automatically because it was more like a pay-to-play sort of thing and not really a way for you to actually showcase your expertise. I'm not saying all paid opportunities are pay-to-play, but there are definitely certain opportunities that look pay-to-play and that they will accept literally anyone, and they will have no quality standards whatsoever. Now, like having to pay for something is not the defining factor for whether something is sketchy or not. There are lots of organizations that are legitimate that require payment, but something that you want to be careful of is if the opportunity just comes up like all the time. It's like the same opportunity, and like hundreds of people have that same exact opportunity. That is a sign that perhaps it's low quality, because it seems like they accept literally everyone and they accept a very broad category of people. But going back to the point, 2 to 3 is good. Anything above 3 is not going to be that relevant unless, I would say 2 to 3. But going back to evaluating the quality, you want to be mindful of the quality as well. For quality, always think about recognition, influence, and impact. These are the 3 things to possibly think about for any kind of opportunity. Recognition as in, are you getting recognized by other top professionals in your field through this opportunity? And can you show evidence that you have gotten recognition? Influence as in, are you shaping the industry in some way, getting top professionals in your field to act a certain way? It could be reshaping technical standards, reshaping thought around a particular aspect of your field. And then impact is, well, it could be impact in terms of, have you moved the industry in some way, advanced it in some way, gotten people to think differently about the industry in some way? These are just some of the kinds of ways to think about the quality of an opportunity and whether it actually advances your argument that you've risen to the top of your field. which is what you want to be doing with EB-1A. It's about advancing your argument that you have risen to the top of your field. That is what EB-1A is about. It's not about checking off a bunch of random criterion, which is, it's something that just comes up all the time. Like, a lot of people seem to think that all they need to do is do a whole bunch of activities, do as many as possible, show as many different examples as possible without regard for quality, thinking that if something sticks, then they have a strong argument. But what you could end up doing is just showing a bunch of low quality evidence alongside your high quality evidence, and overall dilute your argument that you're risen to the top of your field. Because think about it. If you are a top professional in your field and you present low quality evidence to advance your argument that you're risen to the top of your field, think about how an officer would think about that. Think about how anyone in your field would think about that. Would they still think you're a top professional? They might question that. They might question that assessment because you included something that was clearly low quality. How about publications? How many are good to have? 2 to 3 again. That's what I'm just going to keep saying for any of the criterion. Anything above 3 is good, but anything above 10 is too much, is what I would say. But this is just for industry professionals. For research profiles, it's different. Would being a co-author of an article with 7 or more other authors make a strong case for you? I have actually not seen that, but at that point, perhaps you could get questioned simply on the basis that you probably played a minimal role in the publication. I mean, I have not seen that, so don't quote me on that. I have not seen someone submit that kind of evidence. But if I was an officer and if I was seeing like 3 articles from you and you're like the 7th co-author for all of them, then I could question whether you actually contributed that much to the article. Of course, that's not the correct standard to apply on the plain language level of things, but that's the line of questioning you are inviting, because it's abnormal to have an article with 7 or more co-authors. Or at least that's just what I've seen. It looks odd. Anyone else have questions? Any other questions? Oh yeah, another point is meeting more criteria does not necessarily mean a stronger profile. In fact, it could just lead to more questions about your profile. So a lot of people think, okay, I have like 5 criteria. I need awards and media coverage now. So they go for low quality awards and low quality media, thinking that by including more evidence, they are automatically strengthening their profile. That is not the case. The more low quality evidence you include, this is just generally speaking, the more likely you are to get questioned on that low quality evidence and just shift your attention away from the high quality evidence. Shift the attention of the officer away from the high quality evidence. And I don't think that's what you want to be doing. A lot of you have this mindset of, I'm going to do as many activities as possible to meet as many criteria as possible. But that's not what a strong profile is about. A strong profile is about presenting a strong argument for how you've risen to the top of your field. Yes, if you can get high quality awards and high quality media coverage, and I've seen both. I've seen industry professionals get high quality media coverage. I think someone I spoke to got more than 50 media coverage examples, but that was because he was already doing a lot of media appearances even before EB-1A. So this was something that he just always did. But that's just to give you a sense of, what is actually needed. It's not more criteria. It's just more high quality evidence. How to frame final merits and sustain a claim for industry experts. Final merits usually comes down to leading a critical role. For industry experts, possibly original contributions. It's about showing that your achievements indicate that you've risen to the top of your field. Sustain a claim does sometimes get questioned, and it gets questioned, and I've seen this happen several times. People have told me that they got questioned because they only did 2 to 3 months of profile building. That is where you could get questioned on sustain a claim. Again, it's not the right standard to apply, but it is because the term sustain a claim is so subjective. You could get questioned on the basis of having profile built for just 2 to 3 months. But I think people have been saying that 6 months to a year profile building is what you want to be going for, at least. So that could be a way to avoid the sustain a claim line of questioning that comes up. But for final merits is about showing how you've risen to the top of your field. And it's about those 1 or 2 things that show that you're risen to the top of your field. Sometimes that's just completely on the basis of your leading a critical role. And how to frame that is usually through comparative and contextual evidence, showing something that is just considered impressive in your field. It could also be showing that you have risen above others in your field. For example, saying, I did this one thing, and thousands of other professionals in my field have not even been able to do anything close to this one thing. So as a result, I am a top professional in my field. That's the kind of evidence you might also want to introduce as part of leading a critical role that could help with final merits, because you are, again, showing how you've risen to the top. And to the top probably means that you are above many, many others. Or at least that's the kind of argument you want to present. Can one evidence be used to satisfy 2 criteria, like, say, original contributions and critical role? Yes, there could be overlaps between the 2, but I think the only situation where there would be overlap is if something that you've done shows that you've contributed to your field outside of your company, because that's what original contributions is going to be about. You can't just show that you've contributed to your company. You have to show that your contributions spanned beyond your company and into your field and affected other companies. That could be part of critical role, because maybe your company works with a lot of other top US companies, and as a result, you were able to develop some sort of technology that is now being used by lots of your company's clients. So that could be critical role, because maybe you were able to generate significant revenue from that project, and then was able to affect other US companies as well, that then adopted the technology that you developed within your company, and then you were able to affect other companies in your field. And that could be an example of commercial usage. That could be significant attention, depending on what kinds of US companies you affected. So yeah, you could have, I wouldn't say like one piece of evidence, but maybe like one experience or one role help you argue 2 criteria. Anyone else have questions? All right, I'll answer a few more questions. Anyone else have questions? Or I can just start asking myself questions. So one question that comes up a lot is, how do I land committee positions? Committee positions come from talking to committee members of the committees you want to join. I know it sounds like kind of simplistic, obvious, but that is the reality of landing these kinds of member positions. It's just a lot of outreach. Like if you reach out to these committee members, show how you can contribute to the committee, or just be so relevant in expertise that you're automatically considered for the committee, then that is how you can land a spot on the committee, because you've shown your relevance, you've shown how you can help. And that goes for any of these other opportunities. Like you want to get onto a journal editorial board, understand the requirements, understand what they need, understand the gaps that they are facing within the editorial board. Maybe they're getting a kind of submission that no one has expertise in, and only you have expertise in that submission, in reviewing that kind of submission. So say that you have that expertise and plug that gap. And by plugging that gap, you are showing that you can be useful to them. And by being useful to them, you will be invited for opportunities to do things for them. You're essentially trying to find ways to do things for them. You want to do things for them, you show you're an expert in what they need, in areas that they need the most help. That's essentially what you need to be doing. That's a lot of landing profile building opportunities. Anyone else have questions? Can you give an example of committees? Well, a lot of IEEE conferences that are coming up have conference committees. So those could count towards the membership criterion, especially if you can argue how your being on the committee indicates that you have outstanding achievements in your field and that other members of the committee have outstanding achievements in the field. Another example could be an advisory board, say for software engineering, it could be lead dev, it could be dev network. These organizations have advisory boards that help with judging hackathons, help with judging awards, help with judging, say, Dev Network's Developer Week conference awards, their devies. So these are just some examples of committees that you could join. Anyone else have questions? All right, if there are no other questions, thanks everyone for joining today's live stream. Or I can just take another couple of questions. Depends on Any other questions? All right, I'll take this one last question. Can you please give more examples of judging roles that might help? So peer reviewing, judging awards, judging contributions to a publication, judging open source contributions for a well-known open source project, judging hackathons, judging startup pitch competitions, judging committee applications for a committee, judging advisory board applications, judging PhD theses. That's been explicitly mentioned in the policy manual. But I think it has to be like PhD level theses. Judging, I guess, outside of the field of tech, like contributions to some sort of like industry project that is like field wide. Judging applications for a conference committee. Yeah, those are just some of the examples that have come to mind. Yeah, you're welcome. Welcome, everyone. Right. That's all for today's live stream. Thanks, everyone, for joining. All right. And what evidence would you need to show? So, like photos, emails, email correspondence, possibly letters from some of these people to confirm that you participated in the opportunity and perhaps to give some context as to what the opportunity was about. Yeah, that's just the kinds of evidence you can include. All right, that's it for today's live stream. Thanks, everyone. Okay, the last question. Does judging 2 conference papers for a conference is fine? Or we need to do multiple papers? 2 conference papers would count as 2 examples of judging, so that should be fine. Yeah. But it just depends on how strong of a judgeable criterion do you want to present. So if all you want to do is 2 papers and you think that those 2 papers alone, because they're so high quality and that your judging was so high quality that you don't think anyone's going to question any of the judging you've done, then yeah, submit 2 papers. But some people have a different comfort level and they think that, oh, like these 2 papers is not enough. Like I know someone who is still profile building. He has an extremely strong profile. He's a C-suite professional and he has like 7 criteria and he is still profile building. Like some people are just not comfortable with presenting a profile that is not extremely rock solid. But some people are just fine. They're in a rush. They want to profile build as quickly as possible, apply. In which case, 2 conference papers would be quite good because that's 2 examples of peer reviewing, 2 examples of judging. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining today's live stream.